You put these on for me, please.
Is the moustache really necessary? Never mind. I work in administration at a major British university, and I'm here to tell you that our universities are broken. What? Broken how exactly? Well, in universities across the country, there's a lot of people doing a lot of pointless work and getting paid pretty well to do it.
Taking the moustache off?
And I'm one of them. My department has 9 members of administrative staff to 23 members of academic staff. That's a ratio of more than 1 administrator for every 3 academics. Sounds fine? Try applying it to almost any other sector. Imagine a shoe factory with 1 manager for every 3 workers. It'd be pandemonium, and what's more, it'd be a huge waste of money, and also time. Too many cooks, you might say. This is kitchen nightmare level stuff. And the university sector is an idiot sandwich. See, I haven't even mentioned the people doing admin outside of our little department. There's teams for timetabling, teams for research support, teams for student engagement. Now, don't get me wrong, many universities have moving parts beyond the academic that do contribute in a positive way to the greater whole. For example, at my old university, I worked on a charity project driven from the central office. We connected students and staff with local charities, and so doing raised the profile of the work both the university and the charities were doing. But this sort of work is only kept on if it provides some kind of net benefit, if it's profitable for the university. Such is the nature of our economic system. But weirdly, there's also parts of the university that don't seem to have to meet this criterion, parts that seem to persist for a whole other reason, even if they don't make any money. The reason they persist is so archaic, so Byzantine, so convoluted, that it honestly still shocks me, even as someone who works in the middle of it. This video is about dragging all that out into the open. Let's start with a brief history lesson. This woman, who is to blame for a lot of things, made a commitment during her time in office that she would make British universities more like British businesses. Thatcher oversaw the Jarrett Report for Higher Education, which wanted to make universities less opaque, make their systems more accountable, and make their research more strategic. In principle, this sounds like a good thing, right? Issue is, it started from the assumption that university research was no longer a good in itself. University research would, in future, depend on something called the Research Assessment Exercise, or RAE. Under the RAE, research funding would no longer be doled out in an open, democratic way. It had to be competitive. See, up until the 80s, universities got grant money as a matter of course, to spend as their subject knowledge allowed. But from the 90s, the RAE determined the allocation of quality-weighted research funding, meaning that established universities like Oxford or Cambridge, with cultural capital, academic doyens, and a historic reputation for putting out quality stuff, would get more money. Meanwhile, universities that were just getting going, like Bradford or Kent, providing a new service to communities that mightn't have had access to academia before, well, they wouldn't get half as much. The RAE was replaced in 2008 by the Research Excellence Framework, or REF. REF is all about impact, but as understood by its core documentation, this really means economic and social impact that is closer to market. If your research isn't relevant to the needs of the current Chancellor of the Exchequer, it might not get funded. So not only are universities competing for scraps based on a pre-existing hierarchy of institutions, they're competing in a heightened ideological environment that assumes research alignment with the government of the day. It's no surprise that with all these terms and conditions, research grant has come to mean something completely different to maintenance grant. We don't have those either anymore, do we? And just as artificial competition was thrown into the research arena, university leadership was moving in much the same direction. The vice-chancellors, provosts and presidents of universities, formerly chosen from among the most storied and respected academics, began to be chosen based on those with the most sound business acumen instead. After all, there had to be some excuse to up their salaries to £200,000 a year, right? Oh, it's £400,000 a year. Okay. These numbers, unprecedented in higher education, are frequently the object of ridicule from staff and students alike. I've heard plenty, as it's not especially clear what these vice-chancellors actually do for their universities. But that's exactly the point. Let's look at Mark Fisher for a second. Mark Fisher was a theorist who's now best known for his work on capitalist realism. But as a teacher, first at a higher educational college and then at Goldsmiths University, he had something to say about higher education too. Specifically, Fisher noted how neoliberalism under Thatcher, Major and then Blair had rolled back the state, or at least claimed to, as if bureaucracy was a thing of the past, only to replace it with a pale imitation composed of public-private partnerships and heavy-handed regulation. Instead of disappearing, bureaucracy has changed its form, and this new decentralised form has allowed it to proliferate. Universities weren't immune to this change. They were still public sector institutions for all intents and purposes, but their funding became conditional. Conditional on a weird kind of competition. Universities were not competing to provide an education, they were competing to manipulate and massage the metrics that govern their survival. To prove that their research was doing some good, and to prove that they were keeping students happy, and to prove that their exams were worth any salt, universities now had to have the data to prove it. What kind of data, you ask? Impact scores for every journal article, student surveys every year, records of attendance for every module, regular reviews of assessment, several different committees for new modules and programs, timetabling exercise to concentrate real estate, liaising with careers, library services, student advisors, experience managers. I like my job. I like keeping students happy and linking them up with the things they need. But I can't shake the feeling that my job might be a bullshit job. That's an academic term, by the way, courtesy of David Graeber. LSE anthropologist by trade, Graeber struck a nerve in 2013 when he published an essay on the back of a YouGov survey highlighting that more than a third of workers in the UK felt that their job made no meaningful contribution to the world. Graeber then expanded his thoughts into a book, defining bullshit jobs like this. A bullshit job is a form of employment that is so completely pointless, unnecessary or pernicious that even the employee cannot justify its existence. How can you determine if a job is bullshit then?
1.
Are you a plaything for important people who want to look like they have a substantial workforce?
2.
Are you competing for your company in the frame of advertising, law or PR simply because others are competing as well?
3.
Are you an expensive solution to a problem that your bosses have decided to ignore the easy solution to?
4.
Are you serving to generate information that your bosses, and only your bosses, have decided is important?
5.
Or conversely, are you levying work on other members of staff without them deciding it's worthwhile? It's that last one that gets me every time. You see, that's exactly what I do at university. I make academics' lives harder. I hand them timetable exercises that will never do them any favours. I make them complete registers when the students paying them should care enough to attend. I make them go to mandatory board meetings with the people who reduce their real pay and complete surveys for those same higher-ups. Higher-ups. That's what unites the categories of bullshit jobs. It's the rich and powerful that decide these pointless services need to exist. Thatcher started doing it in the 80s, and we've kept doing more and more of it to this day. Oh, you think your research is valuable, do you? And you say you have a good relationship with your students?
Yeah.
Okay, well just fill out these 6 forms to show the value of your research, and then fill out this survey about your students, and then get them to fill out this other survey. And here's 50 extra students, and a room that only fills half of them, and 3 extra forms, and 2 extra members of admin staff who I believe have some surveys for you.
Can you see the issue here? Can you see the glaring short-sightedness of it all? One kind of opaqueness, the hufty-tufty high culture of the academy, has been replaced with another kind of opaqueness, the unknowable wants of metrics and measuring stick waving, courtesy of government ideology. Now, I'm not saying that letting academics do whatever they want with little to no oversight is necessarily a good thing. Why? You might have heard of the Sokal affair. Back in 1996, the physicist Alan Sokal submitted a journal article entitled Examining the Science of Quantum Gravity from a Postmodern Perspective to a journal called Social Text. Social Text didn't peer review its submissions and published Sokal's article within the year. But the article was entirely bogus. Sokal, in his own words, was aiming to demonstrate the willingness of the Academy to accept nonsense and sloppy thinking into its canon. Is it fair for people like Sokal to question academic integrity like this? Does university research need more metrics? Well, let me say 2 things about that. While there are certainly some journal articles that even I can point to and say, what was the value in writing that? They're in the minutest minority compared to the sheer quantity of groundbreaking research that gets put out into the world by universities every single day. What's more, if you want to complain about the bad research, that stuff's still getting past the arcane barriers of 21st century research admin, so there must be something to improve there, right? And the quality of that ostensibly half-baked research would probably improve if academics weren't spending so much of their free time on admin. Secondly, these fresh expectations on research excellence have come in at exactly the same time as a complete volte-face from university management and, more pressingly, massive, unprecedented cuts to university funding. Teaching sizes have skyrocketed, and while the number of degrees awarded has skyrocketed likewise, the amount of one-to-one tuition and support afforded has fallen through the floor. That's in part why universities end up spending thousands of pounds on student advisors and engagement teams and service leads. The distance between students and professors has stretched so much that they can't even have a traditionally awkward interaction. And the distance between students and other students has stretched too, especially post-COVID. In our department, we've seen extracurricular engagement completely drop off. What all this means is universities are paying to offer student services that academics could have given them before as part of the course. But now they can't because A, they're stretched so thin, and B, they've got admin staff breathing down their neck all the time. But it's not just admin staff. Some academics end up getting promoted into the boots of bullshit jobs, as this testimonial demonstrates. My very brief stint as head of department reminded me that at the very minimum, 90% of the role is bullshit. Filling out the forms that the faculty dean sends so that she can write her strategy documents that get sent up the chain of command. At this point you might be saying, cut the admin staff. Sort the scholarly wheat from the chaff. Quit your job, Ed. Viewer, the problem isn't with me. I'm the life of the party in the office. No. The problem is with the institution around me. Around all of us. Students, teachers, researchers. Speaking of, it's insane to me that administrative staff can join the same union, the UCU, as academic staff, given that they effectively act as playthings for the big baddie, Universities UK, the organisation that's consistently steamrolled calls for fairer pay, better working conditions, and a decent pension. When I asked my colleague Dr. Stevo, not his real name, to fill out a form, I'm doing exactly what Universities UK wants and exactly what UCU doesn't. Look, it goes without saying, I do want to work in a university, ideally doing what Dr. Stevo, not his real name, does. But I don't want to work in a university like this. So the only solution is to change it. Simplify research funding, scale back regulation, make feedback bottom up, not top down, pay people properly, across the public sector, across society. And when you've done that, you can accept my resignation with a smile. Thank you for watching. That was a more personal one, I appreciate. I hope I don't get doxed or fired or doxed and then fired. In any case, like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next month for another one.